And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show. So today I am joined by John Lester, one of the people behind the game Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Maya.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
And thank you for joining. So let's start with the introduction of you and what you're all about in terms of video games and this game.
I am, I've been playing video games most of my life. I'm 39 right now. So I grew up playing the NES and the ColecoVision was my first console I ever played growing up as a kid, but grew up during the 16-bit wars between Super Nintendo and Genesis. And back in 2008, 2009, I started a YouTube channel called Games 31, where I review retro consoles and games, and that kind of got my foot in the door with developing games, which kind of led into getting connected with Collectorvision Games, it's an indie game company that we've really focused mainly on homebrew games, but we obviously released City Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan, which came out for Steam and Switch, and will be coming out later this year for Xbox One as well as PS4.
Okay. And when did you personally first discover video games?
Oh gosh, I probably was like 3 or 4 when I first started playing games, so pretty young. I had 2 older brothers, so of course they had consoles, and they introduced them to me.
Okay, and what would you say was your favorite game or games growing up?
Favorite games growing up. I'm a big platformer guy, so I like all the Mario games, of course. I'm a fan of Zelda series, of course, as well. So big fan of Nintendo, but I also like Genesis as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like the beat 'em ups. I like the arcades. Streets of Rage for the Genesis is awesome. Love the old school games, and then of course I like the more modern stuff as well. So.
Okay, and what would you say is your favorite game or games now?
My favorite games now. I've been really enjoying Mario Odyssey for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Playing that quite a bit with I have twins that are almost 7. So we just went through that. Really fun game, very fun. I think it's one of the better Mario games out there. I really enjoy the old school, not the old school style indie games, kind of like City Hunter. So I really enjoy games like The Messenger. Went through that, which is a really fun platformer. If you haven't checked that out, it's really fun. I like Mario Maker as well. Mario Maker 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so, if the apocalypse wasn't currently happening outside and we were able to have conventions like in the before times, and someone was walking by your booth at, let's say, PAX, and they were wondering what Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Maya is, what would be the elevator pitch you'd give them?
Well, I would say that City Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan is our love letter to the classics, right? So it's a kind of a mixture between, if you take a little bit of Super Mario Brothers, mix it in with a lot of Mega Man, some Castlevania elements, even Zelda 2. We have quite a bit of references in Zelda 2, for example, and it's our love letter. So, but it's all in a Maya backdrop, right? So we did a lot of research on the Maya culture. It's all the bosses you fight, the gods you fight are actual Maya gods. The items you collect are actual Mayan items, for example. So we did a lot of homework into this game. So it's a unique storyline. It's got really tight controls, and there's 2 different endings. So 13 levels, 2 different endings. So you can kind of play through one time and get the happy ending. You can play through the second time and get the sad ending. So there's some replay value there.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. I'll have to keep that in mind. Let's see, and where was there any one place where the idea for the game came from, or was it just you said it had a lot of inspirations from various games, so was it just was it inspired by one or many sources?
Many sources. I think I was probably initially inspired by one. We're a big fan. I don't know if you heard of the game called Montezuma's Revenge, which came out for, the classic consoles, right? The Intellivision, the ColecoVision, the classic PCs back in the day. and we're fans of that game. We wanted to kind of create a. This game was actually going to be a game. City Hunter and the Curse of Mine was actually going to be a new NES game for the regular Nintendo Entertainment
Really?
System. Yeah, and we actually have a build of it that's actually playing on the NES. Um, but it kind of just evolved, and we kept adding to it and changing, and it took us close to 6 years to develop this game. So we kind of kept adding things that we're like, oh, this is cool. This is what I like from Mega Man. This is what I like from Mario. This is what I like from these certain games, and we kind of we put them in there as Easter eggs. So people who know those games are familiar with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a ripoff. It's very subtle. But yeah, so that game, it's kind of evolved from the game. So it's evolved from the Montezuma Revenge. That's where that's where the Maya theme came from, and it kind of evolved into what it is today.
Okay. And at the time of recording, I've already beaten the game, but let's just pretend I haven't.
Okay.
And how would you say the gameplay is to someone if you were just out and about at town or at some manner of gaming promotional event?
Well, it's a game that you can play. It's kind of linear to a point. I mean, there's a hab counter room which you can choose different doors as you're aware, and so you have to collect skulls you have to collect certain skulls to unlock those doors. If you play it in a way, you can actually play the game straight through without having to go back. There's no, but it is kind of Metroidvania if you want to call it that, where there are parts if you kind of rush through the game, you aren't looking for the items. There will be points where you have to go back and get skulls and special items, but you can my record playing through the game. I don't know how long it took you to beat the game, but I can beat it in probably a little over 2 hours.
No.
But I think normally people who, from what I'm seeing, people who play it take closer to 8 to 10 hours plus, sometimes maybe 6 hours or less. But how long did it take you to beat it?
Not entirely sure.
Okay.
I don't know. It took me quite a while to get all the skulls. I'd say probably closer to the 8 to 10 hours that you
Yeah.
said, others have played.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. It's there's some humor in it for sure. We've added some humor and some Easter eggs, and every level has its own unique theme. So, for example, you'll fight like a corn god, Hunapa, and his attack is he'll throw like corn stalks at you and corn cobs, and but the whole theme itself of the whole level, you'll see like corn stalks in the background, and then there's an underwater theme level. So everything kind of has their own unique theme, unique enemies in many cases. There's special items you can get in the game. There's 12 different relics you can get throughout the game, so you can you can upgrade your whip to like a fire whip to a whip where you can break certain blocks, and then you have like a boomerang and a spear. So there's a lot of customizability you can do in the game as well.
Okay. And what made you decide to use Mayan mythology specifically?
Good question. Yeah, we've always been fascinated with the Maya culture, and I just, growing up as a kid, I've been down to Mexico several times and seen the Mayan pyramids down there, and they're pretty fascinating. But this game, like I mentioned kind of briefly before, is very heavily based initially on Montezuma's Revenge, which that game has in itself a Maya backdrop. So we kind of stuck to that theme. Initially, it was called Sydney Hunter and was it Sydney Hunter and the Revenge of the Maya or something along those lines. And then it was called Sydney Hunter Curse of the Mayans, and then we changed it to Curse of the Mayan. Anyway, we've changed the name several times, but yeah, we've always stuck with the Maya theme because I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And from the time it was just an idea to the time it was an entirely finished product, what would you was there a specific part of the game that you say gave you and the team like a particular amount of trouble?
Well, I think the game took us close to 6 years to develop. We kind of looking back on it, our next game we're gonna put all the pieces together first and then go into programming. I think what we did with this game was we were programming it along the way as we were adding to it, and that just delayed things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the biggest challenge. I mean, we're a very small team. There was about five of us that really worked on this core team that kind of worked on this game. I was one of the project leads. Um, but we all worked really well together and we kept adding ideas, but got to the point where we just like we have to stop adding ideas because otherwise we'll never get this game done. So I would say that was probably the biggest delay. Programming just takes because it's such a small team. We only have one really core programmer. It just took time, and we all have our day jobs too. So that was probably the biggest delay.
Okay. So, like you said, it's like taken roughly 6 years for the game to go from like idea to finished, and like as someone who doesn't really know, like the meat and potatoes is like nitty gritty process of like game development. Would you say for like a game like Sydney Hunter, would you say that's like a typical length, or would you like, as you said previously, because you were like programming as you went, as opposed to
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so I would say like this game took longer than it should have, right? I mean, it took us close to 6 years to develop. If we had all our ducks in a row, and we had everything lined up, I think we'd probably get it down in a year or two. But we learned our lesson the hard way on that. And then the testing and the bug testing is really a slow process. Just make sure there's no bugs, that no issues with the game itself. So we had a lot of programmer testers, and I think next game we'll have a lot more too. So.
okay. And with Sydney Hunter, like as you said, like calling back to like old timey games like Castlevania and Zelda is like, would future projects for you and your team, would you say you're going to be like sticking to that type of formula, or are you going to be branching out into other genres once you're able to, and like other visual styles?
I think definitely other visual styles. We've always been like all of us really big fans of the platformers themselves, just the general genre of that. So, our next game we're working on is going to be a we're kind of working on different styles, different. This is more of a I would consider this like an 8-bit platformer, right, with chiptunes music. The
Mm-hmm.
next project we're working on will not be 8-bit. It's going to be more like hand drawn. So it's going to be kind of more unique, but similar genre.
Okay. And uh, yeah, so like what would you consider like throughout the entire game's development? What would you say was a particular like part of the game that was like your favorite to make and like went the most smoothly from like start to finish?
I think that's a good question. I mean, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Probably the first one is probably the story. I came up with the story, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it all kind of came together
Mm-hmm.
pretty nicely with the different bosses and the different relics and the theme and all that. So I'd probably say that probably worked out the best. We weren't really sure how many levels this game was going to be when we first worked on it. We just, like I said, we were just adding game levels. So I think it came out to a nice round number. I think the game for retails for $10. I think you get your pretty good money's worth from it with based on how long it takes and how many levels there are. It's not one of those. It's not a very simple game by any stretch of the imagination. But I think when you die, and I see watch people play it, like I feel like when people die in this game, it's not because of the game, it's because of what they did, right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not any cheap deaths in the game.
Yeah. Um, hmm. And yeah. Um. So you've mentioned like this is the first time I like heard it that there's two different endings for the game, and without giving like too much away for any like
Hmm.
potential players out there, like as being as like broad and vague as you can, like
Okay.
how would one like get one ending or the
There
other?
it's an item that you get in the game. So I'm assuming you've got the happy ending, where because I think 90 from the stats what I'm seeing on Steam. about 98% of people get the happy ending. So that, a lot of people don't know about the secret second ending. So to unlock the secret ending, there's a certain item you should not get. And this item, I won't say any spoilers what the item is, but I will say this item in the game, you get it, you're like kind of thinking like, what is this used for? It doesn't really make much sense when you first get it. It's given to you by a woman in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and you're probably like, what's this have to do with anything? If you don't get that item, you play it, you will unlock the different ending.
Okay. And now we move on to the final question, which of all previous guests have always understood, and, and there's never been any sort of confusion on. So, John, in your opinion, is video games?
Is video games what?
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yes, I guess I'll say yes.
All right then. And yeah, with that, we come to the conclusion of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I would like to thank John Lester of Collectorvision Games for joining me and talking about this game of his.
Well, thank you so much for picking the game up. I appreciate it and beating it. That's awesome. You took the time to go through it. I hope. What did you think of the game? Did you enjoy it?
Well, this is just because I'm bad at these types of games, and
Uh
I'm
huh.
just bad at video games in general. But I was just kind of like angrily shaking my controller and swearing a lot at the final boss fight. The
Yeah.
all three stages of the final boss fight, just because.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
and yep, and so as you said before, if any of you are interested in Sydney Hunter and the Curse of the Maya, it is currently out on Steam and the Nintendo Switch. I have it on the Switch just because, just the Switch is, for me, the ideal thing to have when you want just like a smorgasbord of different types of games.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, later on, before too long, you'll be able to enjoy it on the Xbox One and the PS4.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you reached out to me. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the guest for checking the game out. One last question for you. How did you hear about the game?
Well, it was. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was PAX South or PAX East, but I saw one
Oh,
of the booths, which I believe was behind what was the Paladin booth at the time.
yeah,
And
PAX East.
if
Yeah.
you were at the yeah, and if you were at the convention floor, I was the person with the giant fire hair with the autograph book, getting everyone's signatures.
Okay, right on. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yep. And if any of the -7 people listening to this have enjoyed what they heard, feel free to like and subscribe. And, when you subscribe, make sure to hit the little bell icon because everyone loves unnecessary extra steps. And if for some reason after you've, given Collectorvision Games your money by buying this game, if you have any money left over, you can go to patreon.com/thepumpkincoptercast and give me some money, if you want. But, yeah, this has been the Pumpkin Coptercast, and as I am, bound by a blood oath to say, have a gourd day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.